should put it off because of COVID. With COVID, you might should put it off.
All right, Carl.
He's sliding down this chair.
Switch? Huh?
No, I'm fine. Thank you. What the heck? Why isn't this recording? Wait a minute, Scott. There we go. Okay. The meeting tonight is for conduct of town business by the town board. The public is invited to participate at the items marked on the agenda, public comment. During that segment of the meeting, if you have a question or comment for the supervisor, please raise your hand and wait for it to be acknowledged. Please state your full name and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Thank you for your anticipated cooperation.
All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please stay standing for a moment of silence for all the men and women in uniform that give us this right to stand up here today, and especially pray for the officers, especially the one in New York City who just passed away, protecting our rights and our freedoms. Thank you. All right. Speak into the mic, they said. I'm going to try. All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion, approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion to approve minutes from the January 10th, 2022 Town Board meeting. Need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, authorize the payment of bills. We have 2 abstracts tonight. One is from 1/11/22 to 1/23/2022. It's an amount of $285,422.90. Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion, pay the bills.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, second abstract is from 1/24/2022 to 1/24/2022. It's back to back, but it's a big one, $780,910.32. And to read, this is a lot of our health care insurance and our comp time and a lot of the big bills that we pay in the beginning part of the year. So that's why it's a big one. So I need a motion.
I make that motion.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Presentations, we have no presentations tonight. So comments on the agenda. Anybody have any comments on the agenda? Okay.
Oh, Mark's
Oh,
got his hand.
Mark, go ahead, Mark, sorry. On the money? How it's being, I will try my best. Yes, no problem. Okay, new business. And here we are, Mark, Verizon Wireless. So the Verizon Wireless, this is the new tower going up at the high school. I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but it's been in front of the planning board now for months. It's been requested that a third party come in and do an evaluation. Manny probably knows a lot about this, right? This is being paid through escrow account by the applicant. So if this has to go through the town board of approval, you're going to see tonight a resolution that we have to approve of this. But there's an escrow account set up by Verizon through the planning board that pays for this. And this is going to be going through all the similar things they did prior, a new balloon test, because the balloon test they prior did wasn't sufficient enough. So I don't know what else you want to know about them. Mark. What's that? This revenue is just for the school district. So the only reason we have to approve this is because it's a legal matter that we're requiring this escrow account to be set up from through the planning board for the town, and it's a third-party inspection. So it's the only reason that's on our docket right now.
Can we have a discussion on that? I mean,
You could discuss it. You were there for some of it, so. Go ahead.
I know, I was there for some of it, and I really, I had questions. The validity why we're having this third party to come in and having this review, which is if the school district should be more concerned if they had any further analysis of it, then, which they're going to benefit from, instead of the town benefited from, and we're going to go put this expense in place where,
Well, my understanding, this request came from the planning board itself to the applicant.
you're absolutely right, it did come from the planning board, but I don't think all of the members were understood clearly the reason for the analysis that we were having this third-party review. So,
I agree, Manny.
I
don't know.
It's the 12th
But again,
hour.
this is the planning, it's an actual planning board process. The planning board requested this to the applicant, and it's their right to request it. The applicant has been okay with doing it. I don't agree with the cost that we are expending. I think it's another $7,500 that the applicant has to pay for this third party to do this process again. I do know there was an issue with some of the things that were done in the past, especially, like I said, the balloon test that was put out there. So it's not a bad thing. I don't agree with having the applicant spend additional amount of money. That's what we're all about up here, is to try to
No, is
limit
the
the amount.
applicant paying for this, or the town's paying for it?
Applicant's paying for it.
The applicant's paying for it?
Yeah, the only reason why we have to do this, it's a legal matter, as far as setting up this escrow account as a third-party inspector through the planning board process. So that's why we have this resolution in front of us. But it
Okay.
is paid through an escrow account set up, and that the applicant pays for it. We do not pay for it. Anytime anybody, as you know, anybody that comes in front of the planning board has to have an escrow account. They have to pay for any engineering, any kind of these types of tests. Everything that's done, they have to pay for. Nothing is ever paid for by the town, all right? It's always done through an escrow account. Now, having said that, I think everybody up here would agree, we don't want applicants to pay undue and unnecessary fees, right? We want to make the process as smooth as possible with the least amount of fees. But sometimes in these certain circumstances, these things come up. So, again, it was requested by the planning board, and we're just doing our due diligence tonight as a legal matter to pass this resolution, so to set up that account, so.
Understood, thank you.
Okay, on the Quest Labs proposal, as you guys know, we put out to bid, I believe, Colleen, it was on Thursday of last week, we put out the asbestos bid for the Tomback building. So this is the first phase of the renovation of Tomback to remove all the asbestos in the building. In order to do that, I believe I brought this up last meeting, we have to have same thing, Manny here, we have to have a third-party inspection as we're doing the asbestos removal, because obviously we can't just rely on the asbestos removal vendor to just say, yes, everything was removed and we agree with that. We actually have to have a third party come in, inspect that, make sure that the air quality in that building is right, there's no asbestos left in the walls, there's no asbestos left in the floor tiles. And what we're going to be using is Quest Labs, Quest Environmental Solutions and Technology. These are the same people that we had a contract with prior to doing the renovations, and they did the original asbestos report for us, so it makes sense to stay with the same people. So we had Greg from Quest Labs give us an estimate, and you guys got all this through email. So he's saying if it's basically a daily rate, so many shifts, and there's so many samples that have to be taken. So he's given us the worst case scenario. The total bill is $9,550. That's the worst case scenario. He doesn't believe it's going to be that much. He believes that since the scope of the project has been reduced in size from the previous meetings we had, that he has a three-week quote here. He believes this project should be done within 10 days, 2 weeks at the top. So
It's a $460 per shift labor rate. And then there's 20 samples at $20 a sample, and that's PCM air samples. And then there's 24-hour daily PCM air samples, and there's 130 of those that have to be done at $15 a sample, and then travel and miscellaneous expenses and so on. Right now, as the bill is $9,550. Again, he will only bill according to days and time he worked. So I need a motion by the board to be able to sign this contract. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You said you have to sign something for the cell tower, too, there.
That's gonna come up.
That's gonna be-
Actually, that's not in,
No.
yeah, you're right, Eddie. I'm thinking it was in our
I gotta keep
resolution.
an eye on you, too, now?
You gotta keep an eye on me, because originally we had this as a resolution, and then our attorney Jeff said we don't have to do it as a resolution. So I will go back to A, Verizon Wireless Tower. And that is the proposal for this escrow account and for this client. So do I have a motion to sign that agreement
I'll
with
make
the
that
wireless cell tower?
I'll make that motion to sign that agreement with the Verizon cell tower.
Second, anybody?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. I was getting nervous there. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Eddie.
You're welcome.
And, okay, third one is the John Beeham, Milton, Landon Park, motion to approve. So, again, we just got the $560,000 Milton Landing LWRP grant. Rosemary Wine is in our audience today. She is one of the main reasons we got this grant. So thank you, Rosemary. And in order to do any kind of grant, any kind of work down here, we obviously need an engineering firm. Beeham Engineering has done all the work for us up to date. Built into the LWRP was a preliminary estimate for his services. So what you guys have gotten in the emails is his service request. This goes along with what he's pretty much done in the past as far as what he charges and what the cost is. So again, the contract's in front of us. You guys have any discussion or what you want to talk about this? You've had this in your emails. Anybody have any thoughts, discussion?
I'm good with it, too.
So I need a motion to sign the renewal of our contract with John Beeham to be our engineer on the Milton Hamlet project.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Rosemary, we got John back. And Cynthia. All right, our workshop topic. So the guys, new guys on the board and ladies, let's be politically correct here, right? And our workshop meeting is basically an open meeting where we could actually just have open discussions on various topics. If you guys actually have a topic that you would like to discuss during this meeting, please get it to me or Tina by the early in part of the week before a meeting so we could put it on here. But these are open discussions, updates, anything that we want to talk about freely. Because sometimes in our formal meetings when we're just paying the bills and going through all our departments, we don't have this time to do it. We originally started this meeting, we were sitting around the tables, but I don't think we got to get to that point, back to that point. But 2022 code book review and update. So this is something that I personally ran on, that we were going to review our code book, because being on the board for 10 years, and I know Eddie being on here for 14 years, and you guys being on planning board and zoning boards, we know that we have some review to do of our code book. So recently, I asked our code enforcement officer to look at two for me, and I think I sent this to you guys too, and that's code in our section 15527A1A, and this is to deal with our parking space. Currently, our parking space square footage in our code says it's a 10 by 20 space. It's a 200 square foot, right? Most municipalities, most areas have a 162 square foot, which is a 9 by 18 space. Talking to our planning board engineer, Pat Hines. He recommends this change. Our code enforcement officer recommends this change. And this is for off-street parking space. So that's something I asked Tommy to look into. He actually sent it to Pat Hines. Pat Hines is reviewing the wording. Once we get that wording back, I will give it to you all to review, and then I will give it to Jerry Camados, our attorney, and if everybody's good, we'll start the process of changing that code. Also, section 15530B12, this has to do with the minimum distance between structures. In our previous code change, we changed the code to have 1.5 the height of a building distance between each building. When we have put that code into place, we weren't thinking about C1 or R1 or C2 as all separate at that time. We were concentrating on R1. So when we passed this code change back in, I think it was 2019, I want to say, it laid that code down on all districts. And C1, which is our hamlets, if you're not familiar with, that's our hamlets in our district. We don't want to have 100, or in this case, 1.5 times the height of a building between buildings, or you never have any buildings in your hamlets, right? If you go into most hamlets in any community, buildings are interconnected with fireproof walls in between them, right? It's building next to building next to building. So I asked Tommy to come up with a code change for this, and basically it's just to say minimum distance between structure in all zones except C1, that we will have this 1.5 times the distance request. So in C1, there'd be 0 setback, 0, right, Tom? Just make sure I'm saying this right. 0 setback between buildings, which in most municipalities, I believe everywhere that is the case. So again, oversight on our part. I sent it to Pat. He's going to review. He agrees 100% that it was an oversight when we did the last update, and that we'll get that changed. We also have some code change that's coming up. This comes directly from the New York State code change, but Tom, that was the one for your code enforcement book, right?
Right, New York State's, again, we've changed the code again. We went from New York codes to international codes back to New York codes, so they're changing some of the verbiage in there. We changed the code book this past year, so all municipalities have to adopt the New York State book, and that's basically, it's a generic adoption of that code.
Yeah, so we have basically a blueprint that comes from the state on this that, again, sent it to Pat. Pat will review. Jerry will get us a resolution. So these are the three that we're just looking at now. There was one other one, Tom, that you brought up today.
We're going to take out the definition of boarding house in 155-1, because boarding houses are not legally allowed in the town of Marlborough. That was left in the code book from years ago. We would mainly take that, just the definition, because it's confusing. If you have a definition in a book, but it's not an allowed use in the municipality, it's a little confusing, so we're just going to delete that definition.
So that seems like a no-brainer, and if you guys have any questions about that, I would advise you to go see the code enforcement officer and get further explanation. But what I would like to have happen is have a committee formed to go through our code book, especially section 155, and review the codes. I would like to bring in the planning board chairman. I would like to have the code enforcement officer in there, obviously. I think Dave and Manny, you are the representatives for the planning board and the zoning board, if I'm correct?
Yes.
So I think you guys should have a meeting. I think you guys should call a meeting with Chris, okay?
I agree.
And have him invite whoever he believes on the planning board would have some input on this. And I would try to get input from the planning board on that. And then myself and Sheridan are going to have a follow-up with the code enforcement officer and Chris, and we're going to go through what you guys discussed, okay? But I want you guys to reach out to them and set something up, and try to get back to us with what you think. And That's what I want to do. Any other discussion about the code changes? Anybody else have any ideas, suggestions? I know, Eddie, we've been here a long time looking at this.
Still a lot of changes.
So, okay, if you don't have any more comments, I mean, you guys have the code book if you want to look through it, but let's get some information back from the planning board, and the zoning board, who deal with it every day, and then we'll follow that back up with Tommy, and I'm going to actually invite Pat Hines to that meeting, who is the engineer for the planning board, and then he'll have some input too, so. All right, the police chief request. So we've heard about this before. Had a long conversation multiple times with Jerry about this. Prior board, we had a discussion about this with Jerry. I wanted to bring this back to the forefront for all the new board members. I just want everybody to understand this is a new position, but it's not actually a new position. This is actually a position we used to have. We used to have 3 sergeants at all time. I don't know when it was, Jerry, 2016 maybe? 2008, that long. Well, when would we stop having it? Okay, 2008. So in 2008, when he left, they chose not to just have a 3rd sergeant. What that does is, on our 3rd shift, we have no sergeant in place, which means we don't have an authoritative figure that oversees any of the people on this shift. We have him on the B and C line. We don't have it on the A line. So what Jerry would like is to get that position back. It's already in our contract, so this was my beef with him last time, that it's a contractual thing. Well, it technically already is in our contract. It's just something that we didn't replace this person. There is a budget hit to this. Obviously, a sergeant gets paid a percentage above the highest step, which is step 6, 5, right? They're the 6th. They would be the 6th. Step 5. So Jerry went back. He went through his budget that we just recently passed. He found monies that he can cut in his budget to make up for this difference, which is approximately $10,000 in salary. There is a little extra that will be going into, obviously, into their pension, because if they make more money, their pension contributions is a little more. Doesn't affect any health care or anything like that. That's all the same. So I'm opening this up to you guys. I know all the background. You kind of got the background a few times. I just want to get your opinion on how you want me to proceed with this.
The other thing is too, Scott, the reason he needs the other sergeant too is because of the massive amount of paperwork that has to be done now.
Correct.
And the downtime on the A line, obviously, he'd have more time to do that, correct, Jerry?
Correct.
With the new government mandate since George Floyd, is that the government, the state, is now requiring us to do near state discovery, which is a ton of paperwork, order recordings, video recordings, all on a time schedule. So that has to be done X amount of days after the subject arrested. With just the 2 sergeants and myself, it's become more and more difficult to do that. I'll give you an example. After Martin Luther Day holiday, I came in the office on Tuesday and burned 36 DVDs. That was my entire day. I got nothing else done. And that's just part of the discovery. That's my part of the discovery. The sergeants have their own to do. So we're thinking if we can get an extra sergeant, we can alleviate some of that by spreading them amongst all 3. Thinking that the midnight sergeant would be the least active. Because please remember, all the sergeants do handle calls and patrol just like everybody else. They just get an additional pay to be a supervisor and take on these active duties. So there's discovery, there's a revamp of the hiring process inclusive of polygraphs and psychologicals that need to be done. There's a whole slew of unfunded mandates they gave us that predominantly without help fall on me. And the more that I do in regards to the general everyday running of the police department that I think a sergeant should be doing, less that I can do as an admin, the chief of the department. So I made this request, I came up with some numbers and how we would pay for it. Now, understand, I did make this request after we settled and agreed on the 2022 budget. So understanding that this money's not in the 2022 budget, we went through that budget, looked at where we could make cuts from. We had one significant line that I would be reducing dramatically, approved. I don't know if it's the best move, but it's the only move that I think I have. When I weighed the 2, what I'm giving up versus what I'm getting, I'm comfortable with making that decision. Next year, we'll rebudget it. We'll talk about
So Jerry was diligent in going back and looking through all the cuts. I mean, that was what I asked of him. I know previous Supervisor Lanzetta asked of him similar requests that, yes, I think we all kind of agree that we should have administrative oversight on our A line, including the two current B and C lines. It does make sense. It was something that was cut out, I would assume, back in 2008 for the same reason as we're talking about, budgetary reasons. But with all the new discovery out there and all the requests, we kind of try to figure out a way, can we get a non-police officer, a civilian, to be able to do this work? And it doesn't really work, because basically you're going to be paying that or more for that person, for another full-time person to come in here and do that. Even if it was part-time, you're pretty much close to that same number. Whereas here you would have a sergeant who is fully trained and certified and knows what he's looking at. He could do it much quicker. Again, it also helps us with our aging, I want to say, seniority in our police department. Our chief here can actually retire. He could have retired a few years ago already, but chooses to keep working. Our other sergeant, first one, can also retire if he wanted to, and the next one right behind can retire very soon, right?
That's correct. Sergeant Pascal is eligible to retire in January of '23. So what leaves that for a problem for us is if any one of us, or all three of us, decide to retire, there is, unless we make a sergeant now, and that sergeant needs to be a sergeant for 3 years, there's nobody here that's eligible to run the department. You have to have 3 years full-time position as a sergeant to even be considered for a lieutenant or even a chief or even an IOC, OIC. So currently we have, that clock hasn't started. But if we're able to make a sergeant now, I'm confident I'm not going anywhere for 3 years. And I'm hoping Sergeant Briggs doesn't go anywhere. Sergeant Pascal's got other ideas in his mind. I don't want to speak for him, but he may or may not be here as of the summer of '23. I don't know. But tomorrow we can all hit lotto and have a very bad day. But that creates a tremendous problem for the future of this department. If something were to happen and the 2 or 3 of us decided to go in a very short period of time, you'd have no other recourse other than to go outside the department to hire new administrators. And
Right, I just want to make
my
clear to
opinion,
the,
that's a disaster.
I just want to make clear to the board that that is an option, right? The option is we would have to go outside the department and hire someone with experience, someone that has the 3 years under their belt or more, to entice them to come into the town of Marlborough and then physically run our department. And then at that time, if it was all 3 of them at the same time, we'd have to find 3 people like that, including the chief. So I think what the chief's getting at, and I agree with him, is that, I'm kicking and screaming as I go about the money, but we have to start thinking for the future as far as people are getting ready to retire. It's actually happening in our upstairs offices too. We probably have a bunch of people that will be retiring in the next 3 to 4 years also. So that's going to start happening too. So we're just at that point in the town where I think it benefits us to start moving these people slowly into different positions and getting that experience behind them. And I would like to see people that have worked within our department for many years following that steps of transitioning up and taking these positions. As Jerry transitioned from dispatcher all the way up to police chief. So, those are the type of people we really want to have in our community that really step up and do the job that we really need them to do. So I'm in favor of it, but I definitely want to get your feedback. And if you guys are not in favor of it, you could, if you don't want to talk out now, you could send me an email and we could discuss further.
Well, the other thing I went through, and Jerry knows, when we had chiefs from outside, and it just wasn't working with that. We had the Pfeiffer first when I first got here, and then we had Pilloway after that. It just wasn't working.
The department history is, the department has bounced back and forth between full-time chiefs and part-time chiefs. Inevitably, full-time chiefs, as long as they stay, work out very well.
Well, I was the one that went to full-time.
Hopefully way past when I retire. Oh, that is an option. That is something that can be explored. So don't close the door on it, but it is an option.
Yeah, I saw the way it worked, though, Jerry. I mean, if he didn't have you as the, you were a lieutenant then, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, and you were really doing the chief's job. That's what I told her, that's why I went to the, wanted to go to full-time chief of police there, and that's why we did it.
So the board at that time pushed, I was eligible, and that's when I was promoted to the chief of police 11 years ago. And it's running strong, running good. I believe it's a great department.
It's a lot better than it was when they were,
Yes, I think we've made leaps and bounds. However, I'm coming to the point where I'm having difficulties getting the admin part of the job done. The fellows are coming in when they're supposed to, they're doing the job they're supposed to, they're making the arrests and writing the tickets. It's all the admin stuff that I'm falling behind on. I can't be expected to travel the tri-county area, making all the meetings that I'm supposed to be making, and still run the department full-time, and have to do discovery, have to do the recordings of the audio and the video, and making sure that the reports get approved, and any one of those things on that list that I sent you guys. Now, that's a list that everybody will share, and hopefully everybody will be cross-trained. Benefits to that is, anybody can do any one of those jobs. So I'm thinking in the future, anybody that can do any of those responsibilities will very easily be able to slide into a chief's position, whoever that person might be at that point in time. There's more to those duties as well that I couldn't even think of, but that was a pretty comprehensive list that I came up with. So that's why I decided, ultimately, I went to the town board looking for a lieutenant's position. That would solve lots of issues. The problem with the lieutenant position is I made a mathematical error when I figured out that we could afford one.
Just a small one, Jerry, just small.
Only of about $100,000.
Yeah.
So when I thought I was coming to ask the lieutenant's position, I had all the details worked out, except I made a huge mistake in the salary. So to promote a lieutenant, with all the changes that have to happen, you're looking at 6 figures. I don't see that reasonable in our budget. I couldn't imagine coming to the board and asking for 6 figures. It's just, although that's probably the right way to fix the problems moving this place forward, in the future, currently, I don't see a resolution to get that done. So my next best suggestion would be to bring back the third sergeant, alleviate some of the responsibilities that I have and the other 2 sergeants have, giving it to the third sergeant, increasing our supervision 24 hours a day now, 7 days a week, and it's just a win-win for roughly $10,000 or $11,000 financial burden, which, like I said, I think I've come up with for 2022, and we're already moving into March, so we're 3 months into that already. So it'll be a little bit less than
It won't be that much, so.
how, now, what do we have to do by resolution?
I mean, I
I've been
could,
doing this 14
I
years.
could get a
with-
resolution by next meeting if you guys are in favor, but I just want to, that's why we're having it in this meeting. This is an open discussion meeting, and this is a good discussion to have as much as we can publicly, right? I mean,
I'll be honest with you, I've been working with the police department 14 years now, and I think it's after Jerry, she spoke to me and you that day and told us what's going on, I think it's a necessity to do this just for the department to run properly. That's my opinion. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and
Manny?
I've been through all the changes.
Manny, you got any comments?
No, I think it's smart planning, the way you're thinking, Chief. I think that you're on the right course, and I agree with you. So I
Okay.
move forward with that kind of
All right.
thinking.
Sheridan?
Hang on, I'm not on. There we go. No, I agree as well. My question was around the urgent officer and if we are really going to miss that reduction.
So, based on the work he's done so far this year, yes, we are going to miss that. However, I'm currently being reimbursed his salary from the urgent confiscation funds because they're using him so much, because of the cases that they're working on. All I can say about it is the case is huge, and it's coming to an end, and I think every We're getting that money in 2022.
Jerry likes to spend that. Look, I talked to Jerry about this too. Same thing, Sharon. I agree. I'm a little hesitant, and I asked him, is there any other spot we can find this money? Because I am a little hesitant to cut the day out of his position because of, again, can't speak about things, but there is a lot of good work being done there, and I think it would be probably a negative to pull him for that day. But like I told Jerry, if we're going to get the $14,000 check, which I'm confident we are, because they did say they're going to approve it, and we actually see that money, then I think we as a board, it would be smart to say, utilize that money in this aspect for that position, so it gets credited back to the police department.
Cutting that one day nets me about $7,800 out of the 10,600 that I need. So it is a significant amount. Again, I weighed heavy on whether I should cut that. We worked very hard. The board was very generous about allowing us to even get a guy back into urgent. And it was a gracious move on the town side, and it has paid dividends in the past. But based on what I have in terms of admin coverage and the amount of workload that we're facing, I have to look at what we can provide our citizens. Urgent's a county thing, although our citizens do benefit from it, obviously. Focusing on just Marlborough, the department, I made a tough decision saying that I would cut that day. I'm not happy about it, and if there's a way I can figure out how to fund it back here and there, like getting the county to pay me out of this, out of the funds that they have, buys me a little extra time now, since they're paying for him in January, December and January now. So the January funds will extend a little further, but that money hasn't come back to me yet. Once it does, I can then extend his budget a little bit, but I don't think it'll equate for the entire year. It was a tough decision, but I think benefit-wise, at least to get through 2022, that was the best decision I could come up with. Unless I said, unless you all figure out
Well.
there's a funding place other than what I'm privy to find that extra $10,000.
I'll look. I'm going to talk
Or
with.
a little less now, because like I said.
I'll talk with Chris. I'm going to talk with Chris tomorrow. We'll discuss some things, but we'll see.
But I understood this going in, just so the whole board knows, the same discussion with the other board. I understood that this whole thing came to revelation after we already approved the 2022 budget. One of the things Supervisor Corcoran said, as Councilman Corcoran then, where were you last month? It just didn't happen, so.
Yep.
So it's nobody's fault, it's just the way it works out. And I know there's not a treaty out back with money, but we did try and look at where we could shave here and there. And in order to get something out of an existing budget, other things have to be cut. And that's the best I can do.
Another question, do you have a sergeant in mind that you're going to make a sergeant, or you're not sure yet?
Yes, so it would be Mike Sikansky.
Okay.
There's two qualified candidates, both on the list. That'd be Eric Maston and Mike Sikansky. Traditionally, goes by seniority, that's Mike Sikansky, but I did offer or speak with both of them, and I got the notation from Officer Maston that at this point in time, he doesn't want to come out of the school, nor does he want to go to midnights.
Okay.
So it would be Mike Sikansky.
I figured Eric's happy where he is.
Dave, you got anything? You want?
No, I reviewed all the documents Jerry emailed, and obviously he put things in perspective and, made them understandable, and I get everything you're saying, and I agree with it. I was a little concerned about the urgent position myself, but you just cleared that up, so I'm good.
Okay. So I'll start the paperwork with our attorney, and I'll get a resolution set up. I'll have some conversation with Jerry tomorrow. We'll meet with Chris, and we'll look through the budget and see if we could actually squeak out and keep the urgent officer going, so.
Sir, there's also a process through civil service.
No, yeah, I know that.
Up to match that all.
Yep, obviously.
Thank you, sir.
And okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And the Tomback renovation, so I want to keep this on our workshop topic as we go through the renovation process. As I said, I'm not going to spend as much time on this tonight, but basically, we started the bid for the asbestos work. We've been working with Phil Bell and Ciro Internet, who is our architect. I think, I know Sherida, Dave, and we've been, had some discussions with them separately as far as design for Tomback. So I think Ciro is, I think, reined in a little after my last discussion with him, because he started to get that architectural feel and started getting a little crazy with some of the designs on the exterior part of Tomback, and I think it would have been way, way over budget. So I had to rein him back in and tell him, understand, we have $800,000 in our budget for this project. I do believe that we can do this extension that we've been talking about, but we have to come up with a design that that fits our budget, and I think he's close to it. He just sent me late an engineering plan for the extension foundation that we would have to put out there. That if we do this extension, that part of the project would be done in-house by our highway department, and the machinery that they have and the material we would buy direct. So that would be outside the scope of the grant money, all right? So the actual construction of that extension would be part of the whole project, right? So it would be one whole project. So I'll give you some more updates on that as I get it. So that's where we are at Tomback. Hopefully by a couple of weeks, we'll get some bids opened up, and we'll see where we're at. All right, the employee health book updates. I know I was having a meeting with Tina and Chris today about this. I had talked to Jerry a little about it. Dave was here today, so he sat in on the meeting. Myself and Dave went through this. These are some of the updates that we have been talking about for a while now, and I wanted to have a meeting with Tina and Chris and Dave, and see if there was anything else in the employee handbook that we were missing as far as some of the updates. I know when I first came on the board 10 years ago, this was something that was passed on to our board, and we finalized it, and it's a really good handbook. But like any handbook, it's like a living document, and it does need to change over time. And some of the stuff that we were looking at changing is stuff that, how do I explain it? It's give-backs to some of our employees that do a lot of work for us, and the union contracts kind of dictate some of this. So some of what the union contracts have put out there, some of our non-union employees have asked, and previous boards, and again, this is up to the new board, but previous boards had agreed that we would make some of these changes, okay? So I'm going to give you guys the top ones that we're looking at, and this is to add and amend vacation leave, and it's in section 312 of the handbook. So this one has to deal with any employee that has 17 years of employment and was hired prior to 1/1/2013. So, and these are people that have 5 weeks vacation. So anybody hired after 1/1/2013 only has 4 weeks vacation. So we had updated the employee handbook back then that the maximum amount of vacation that they would accrue would be 4 weeks a year. So this applies to anybody with 5 weeks vacation, and that is to kind of match what some of the union contracts state, is that they would be able to cash in one time a year of 5 days of their vacation and one buyout per calendar year. It's similar to the wording that we have in all our union contracts. And again, this isn't for every employee, but this is for anybody hired on 1/1/23 prior to that. And as I said, over the next so many years, you're probably not going to have any of these employees left here. So this is for current employees. So I don't know what you guys think of that, but that's
You
something.
said 17 years?
They have to have at least 17 years of
We'll
service,
go back to the 2004 then.
and they had to have been employed prior to 1/1/2013.
Well, you'd have to be. if you're
Right,
17
so
years.
they have to have at least 17 years, because that's when they hit, at that time, they were hit the 5-week vacation threshold. Anybody hired after 1/1/2013 only gets a maximum of 4 weeks. So Me, myself, and Dave are recommending to the board that we actually approve this. So unless you guys have any objections to that, that'll be one of the things I would
That sounds
ask the
fair.
board we put in.
So how many employees would be eligible for that buyout?
Probably most of it.
Well, it does, just remember too, this doesn't apply to elected officials and it doesn't apply to the chief.
Oh, wait a minute, I got 3 more years and I have 17 years.
So this,
No,
no
no, no, it doesn't
union
apply to
members.
union at all.
Anybody that's in a union contract, it doesn't apply to. So it's just specifically our upstairs staff that are only
So
full-time.
you got one,
So it applies to Danielle,
she's not here
applies to
17 years.
Tina, it applies to Chris, it applies to Cindy, and it would apply to Kathy.
And also Tommy's secretary.
It wouldn't apply to Penny, she was hired after, right?
Oh, after 13, 113.
We applied it to Tommy.
Well, and Tommy's actually, so 6. So it's 6 people right
You
now.
say Wilco too?
Yep, Chris Wilk. So, yeah, it's 6 people.
So, yeah, but now if the people that were hired after that, no matter how long they work here, they're not going to get any of that.
4
They
weeks.
don't get it because they don't have 5 weeks. This is just to
They
say,
only get 4 weeks.
so,
The max is 4 weeks, anybody hired after 2013.
right. So the way we were looking at this, and we looked at it in the union, it's a little different, especially in the police department, because when they do, if they did keep the vacation and they took vacation, we actually have to cover their shift, right? If the highway departments do it and they take vacation, they're getting paid anyway, and no one's covering their shift. So we looked at it as if they take the pay up front, but then they're still working, now we're getting an extra week of work out of someone, right? So one way or another, they're getting that pay. I guess it's just a matter of how you look at it. So it's a benefit. I'm not going to say it's not. It's a benefit to our employees, and it's something we do for our union members, and I think it would be a good thing to do to our non-union employees that have been here for a long period of time, and they have the 5 weeks. Again, this is only for those 6 employees. So if I don't have any objections, I'll add that to part of the employee handbook. We're going to look at amending the personal leave. So this is section 316. So back in the day, we changed the personal leave, which was 3 days, to 2 days for this is all non-union employees. Union employees, I believe, are up to 4 days for personal days. So again, this is a give back to our non-union employees to say, we appreciate you, we're going to give you that extra 3rd day back that we took from you years ago. So I don't know if you guys object to that, but myself and Dave were recommending again that we do this. So, no objections?
No
Guys,
objection.
okay? All right. So here's another one that's come up, and I know myself and Eddie have dealt with this a bunch of times. It's a loosely known policy, snow days, right? So we don't actually, in our code book, in our handbook, I should say, we don't have a policy that deals with snow days. We kind of been going by if the school has a snow day or the school has a 2-hour delay, that our employees that aren't essential, like our highway department and people that have to go out and do that, that they would follow the school snow day policy if it's a 2-hour delay, okay? If they actually close, our guys are still on a 2-hour delay. So basically, if it's a snow day by the school, closed or delay, our employees would run on a 2-hour delay. It does 2 things. Of course, it helps them staying off the road, not them getting in an accident, then they're out for months on end, all right? We don't want that to happen, or God forbid, something even worse. And secondly, it gives the opportunity for the people to come into this facility to plow and get everything plowed up and salted and sanded without any cars being here. As you know, the upstairs is very tight as it is, so to have cars there and trying to plow around them is almost impossible. So it serves 2 purposes. So we actually want to add section 419 to the handbook that actually basically says all that, all right?
So it's any time, even when it's closed, it's a 2-hour delay.
The most we have is a 2-hour delay. It would be a 2-hour delay. they have a 2-hour delay, we have a 2-hour delay. If they have a 3-hour delay, we have a 2-hour delay. If they have a closed day, we have a 2-hour delay. So it makes it simple. If the school closes or has anything, we're basically going to have a delay, all right? Like normally, if the school closes or they have a delay, that means the roads are bad. The superintendent of schools has talked to John Alongi, who is our highway superintendent, who gives him a recommendation, yeah, I think you should actually have some kind of a delay. This is how bad the roads are, and it goes down the hill. So I think it's a wise thing. And we've been doing it anyway for years. It's just never been put in a policy. So I think it'd be smart to put it in the policy, okay? There's a couple other ones that I'm going to send you guys email. So, one is this work from home. So, what's come up with COVID-19, the pandemic, last year or 2020, we actually ended up getting mostly all our people that could work from home, laptops to work from home. But we don't have any policy on that. So I don't know what the wording's going to be yet, but there should be some kind of wording in our handbook that deals with working from home, being able to work from home if there's a pandemic again in the future, God forbid, how that works. My suggestion and Dave's suggestion was basically work from home would have to be basically approved by the supervisor, all right? And a supervisor would get approval from his town board, right? That this is the policy we want to abide by. At this point, everybody pretty much has a laptop, except, which I can't believe, Danielle in the clerk's office, but we are working on that currently to do that because we need it right now for Danielle. We would have been great. So we're going to look at that. Here's another one. So this is a sticky one, comp time. We had a long discussion about this. There is no comp time in the town of Marlborough officially on the books, in our handbooks, anywhere. But we do have comp time being utilized. So we as a board have to get our hands around this because this was something, again, loosely put out there a long, long time ago that if you went above your hours of work, that you could get comp time. Well, we don't have a policy that says that you could actually do that. It was just a loosely used policy. So what's been happening is some of this comp time has been accumulating, and people are accumulating comp time. Comp time shouldn't be accumulated, and then at the end of the time, now they're having weeks of comp time, right? So we're going to have further discussion about this, I think, through emails and conversations. But I want you guys to think about that. What would you think our policy? I mean, realistically, we don't have a policy of comp time. We could just say there is no comp time.
So we don't have no policy on that because they're salary employees, correct?
If you're a salary employee, Jerry knows this very well. You could work 100 hours in a week. You could work 20 hours in a week. At the end of that week, you're getting the same paycheck because that's what you signed up for when you signed up for the chief of police, right? You're a 24/7, 7-day-a-week employee.
So that basically, we should state what we mean by salary employee.
Right.
And so this way, we announce ourselves what our expectation is, then we make it known to everyone, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, if you're an hourly employee, comp time never comes into play because if you work past your regular time, you're getting paid overtime pay, right? You're getting paid for it. This is to deal with people that were non-hourly employees, right? They are, not supposed to get comp time either, but for some reason, somehow, this has come into play. I do have to ask the board, I have to call our attorney on this because I do got to get some legal advice on it because this has been a policy that's gone on for a while. And does it set a precedent that it's been going on for a while? And can we just change it without any repercussions? So I'm just going to, if it's not okay with the board, I would like to give the call to our attorney on this and get clarification.
Of course.
Okay, so, but I'm going to ask him in that conversation and his expert advice, what would he suggest as far as legal going forward, and if he has any other towns that he represents that they have come up with these questions. So I'm thinking, I don't have a problem with comp time in general, but there has to be some kind of limits
Per year.
and how they use it, when they use it. If we were okay with giving them a couple hours, because you stayed this night, should it be used within the 10 days? Because, you know, okay, you stayed late this night, well then tomorrow leave 2 hours. I don't know, but that's a discussion between us. Technically, if you're hired as a full-time employee and you're a salary employee, there is no comp time. So it's just been elusive. So I don't want to keep beating the dead horse, but we're going to have to talk about that further, all right? And then the only other one that came up is possibly some of the employees are asking about cell phones because, again, a lot of our employees do use their cell phones for a lot of town work. They do. I know I've been in this job for, 3 weeks. I think I've called Tina and Chris umpteen times at home at night, on weekends, to ask questions, to do things. So, you know, we're asking them to utilize their home phones. Police contracts actually state that the sergeants get $30 per month for their cell phone, up to $320, whatever it is, a year. Their full-time officers get, I don't know where the number came from, but $27 a month. Some of our employees, like the highway department, 3 of those gentlemen, per their contract, have cell phones that are physically paid for. The code enforcement officer's office, his phone is physically paid for because he's on call 24/7. The chief's phone is paid for 24. So, no, that's right. The chief gets the $30 a month, unfortunately, which he actually should get it paid for. So there's a whole talk about cell phones, and if we should get into other employees. Okay, so again, this is another conversation we're going to have. Do we do this? Do we not do this? You know. So it's just something else we got to think about, right? So that's all I had as far as employee handbook updates, unless you guys have other things that you want to discuss about that. But I'm going to move forward unless anybody else has anything else.
No, I'm good.
All right. So I don't have any correspondence. So any public comments? Ooh. Go ahead.
I just had a question. Is this on?
You got to pick it up there, Mark. There you go.
I just had a question about John Behan, what the cost is, his salary or fee, and what the scope of his work in particular is going to be?
So his scope of his work is overseeing, of course, coming up with the engineering plans and he has a architect that works for his firm, Jason, and I can't remember Jason's. He's an engineer. What's Jason's last name? I can't remember his name, but they come up with all the architectural and engineering design that we're going to be doing down at the Milton Landing from this grant, the $560,000 grant. He oversees the everyday operations of the project, how it's being performed. Is the contractors doing what they say they were supposed to do when we bid it out? Are they doing it to spec? Anything that is in that contract, he has to verify. He has to, I believe he has to document all that work. He has to submit it. Well, Rosemary's going to be submitting a lot of the paperwork for us up to the state, right? So there's a lot of work that's involved with this as far as the
He's going
grant.
to play the role of a construction manager?
Yeah, I'm just seeing if I have in this yes. Just seeing if I have his number in this one that I printed out here. Yeah, it's
So
right.
he's
it's right
getting
in-
paid out of the 560?
Yeah, it comes out of the grant money, so I don't have it on the top of my head, Mark, but I'll follow up tonight with you. I'll email you the number, but I have it in his actual contract. I just had the cover letter for his
Now,
contract with me.
the drawings that you see on the fence as you go into the park, is it implementing some of those
Yeah,
drawings?
that's the main design. The main design is that, and that was done by Beham Engineering.
right.
So when you walk in, that's pretty much where we're looking at. There's going to be some slight modifications to some of that, especially like where the CSX crossing is for the pedestrian crossing right now.
Okay.
That's going to change some of the design plan. Where the kayak launch goes, We had that discussion on the last 2 meetings, where that's gonna go. The walkway is being implemented now, but that's a separate grant, right? That's
Okay.
coming from up to the bottom. So yeah, it's mostly what's in that design. But what he has to do is he's got to come up with bid package, the whole bid package, get it out to bid, and again, verify what they bid on actually is completed according to that bid. So yeah, he's like I call him like the project manager, the oversight.
Do you have also any update on the South Pier?
No updates as of yet on the South Pier as far as the pylons, nothing yet. I've been going back and forth with Brandy Nelson as far as getting the inspections completed for the third-party inspections, and we have not got any response back from Arden yet on that. So my last conversation with her was that if we don't get anything by the end of the month, that we possibly will be going out and getting our own third-party inspection. And those monies that we would expend for that third-party inspection will be deducted from Arden's last check that we're still holding back from them.
Right.
So we owe them $16,000 still for the remaining balance on the pier work they did. So whatever if we have to go to a third-party inspector and we have to pay for it ourselves, whatever that cost will come out of that last $16,000 we owe them. So,
Okay, thanks.
you're welcome. Come on up.
Hello, I'm Ted Millar. I'm the chair of the Marlborough Democratic Committee, and I'm just here to invite the public to a virtual discussion that we are sponsoring about the proposed revitalization of Milton Main Street. This will feature Robert Pollock, the proprietor of Buttermilk Falls, on Wednesday, February 2nd at 8 p.m., and we ask people to register. This is open to everyone. We ask people to register, and they will be forwarded the meeting link. And is it possible we can
Sure.
distribute these?
Yeah,
Okay?
yep.
Actually,
I signed up for it. I'll
Yep.
be there.
Yep, I saw that. Okay.
It's a good thing. Put it right. Colleen, give them
Gives
to
to
Colleen.
Colleen? Okay.
yeah, she can put them up in the front desk.
You can put
Thank
them
you.
upstairs, Colleen? Yeah, Colleen will put them upstairs, and they'll be up by the clerk's office for people to pick up. Thank you.
So you can't attend this meeting, this is only by Zoom, is that correct?
It's actually Google Meet, but yeah, it's virtual, yeah.
That's good. It'll be a good discussion, especially with Bob. It'll be lively, I'm sure. Thanks for doing that. Anybody else with a public comment? Well, I'm sorry. Oh,
My name's Meredith King, and with the parking reduction in
Yep.
space, now that's for the public parking, only spaces,
It would be any off-street parking,
off-street?
which is, yeah,
gotta be public.
anything on the, in the
So that,
hamlets.
well, then you have to reline it, or, I guess, is there gonna be any, are
I
you gonna
mean-
leave the ones existing, or?
I think we wouldn't change the,
Any code change that happens now is from that time moving forward. It's not
forward, right?
It's not retro,
Correct.
okay.
And we did an investigation of the square footage to give you a history. In the Northeast, the 162 square feet was standard for outside parking. The standard we set, the 200 square feet, was standard for interior garage parking.
Okay.
So when that code was adopted, and I'll only speculate, 'cause I wasn't there when it happened, they adopted the most restrictive code of the 200 square feet, which was interior garage parking. So when we look at these other projects, most of our projects, we don't have any interior garage parking. So we're going back to the Northeast standard of 162 square feet. But that will only move forward from any project passing from now on. We don't have to go back retroactively.
Okay, that was my question.
But I guess I have a question on that too, Tom, and thanks for the question, because this actually gives me a question. If a prior applicant does want to use the new code, can they?
If it hasn't already, if the project hasn't been passed already, that's correct.
I mean, what if it
Or built out, I should say built out. If the code passes on a certain date, the project has been not built out, they could use the current code during that construction, just like any building code. The building
But
code
if it was built out,
You can't change back.
You can't go back.
they would have to come back for an update to their site plan?
If we change the
Technically?
code, they could do an amendment to site plan for square footage, but it was adopted, their site plan was adopted as per the code as of
Right.
that time. So can they come back for a less restrictive? I mean, you could ask the attorney, I believe they can, but it would be a reapplication for submittal for an amendment to site plan.
Right.
Which, again, if you basically got your site plan passed under the code that it currently sits on, you have enough parking spaces. So you've met the code requirements. So to
Yeah, I'm assuming anybody that's already got approvals met the requirements, so they're okay.
That's correct.
But, and, you know, but I just, that's a good question. I didn't think about, can they go backwards and say, I want to resubmit? I don't know why they would, but I'm just thinking like with the Falcon having some issues that possibly can come up with the new development, they might have to go for a new site plan approval.
Well, they will. I mean, that's just a fact. The fact is they're going to have to go for a resubmittal for an amendment to site plan because they're going to lose their parking. And then when they go for the resubmittal for the amendment to site plan because they've lost the existing parking with the new development, then they'll be able to use the current code that's in the book. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And then the only other thing I just offer is food for thought with regard to some of the issues you brought up about vacation and comp time. I was an administrator at a facility where this really became a hot issue, the exact same thing.
Yep.
Non-salaried people, and it really, the crux of it really became, I mean, I could talk for hours about this, but the crux of it really became is your accounting of your payroll system and how you account. That became the sort of the foundation is how people accounted for their time. And then it just, I would encourage you from experience, and this was like a 4,000 member department, that comp time, it got out of hand. And so I would just encourage you. But that really became, when we took it, of course, attorneys were involved, but it was really, the basis of it really became your accounting system for your payroll. And how people accounted for their
It
time.
definitely was, that was part of our discussion today.
Yeah.
How do we really account for it? It's a tough one. It's a really,
Yeah, and if you're not using, I mean, this was a non-union organization, and we did not have, time cards and punch clocks and that, but that's really became the crux of it. But I would encourage you, because it's a much smaller, but when you have 4,000, 5,000 people, it was out of control.
I think you bring up the point though, is like,
So you're saying
people,
reel it
everybody
in,
has a
right?
problem
Don't
with
let
it.
Yeah.
There's
be
different
at-
problems that
that's
arise, no
what you're
matter if you have
saying, right?
4,000 people or you have
Yeah.
6 people. The problems do arise no matter how many
And with
people
the
you have.
vacation time and the retro, when we looked at that, it was easier for people to sort of cash in, if you will, yearly some of their vacation time.
Right.
Because, you're getting paid at 2020 at, say,
Correct.
$10. And then, in maybe 2021, it's 12. So
Absolutely.
it's actually cost effective to let people.
Absolutely, that's kind of why we agreed to in some of the union contracts, and now that we're asking to look at it in here, is because you're 100% right. You're not carrying those hours over, and then the next year you're making more money, and it's actually a little cost effective in a way. So, and it's budgeted for either way anyway. So it's not like it's not budgeted for.
Right,
It's already
right.
budgeted for.
So,
So we're not asking anything that's not budgeted for. It's just something, I think we actually will get another week of productivity out of employees because they're actually here. So, and then they'll be happy because they get a little extra money in their
Yeah.
pocket. So, look, we want to make our employees happy. We don't want to make our employees unhappy. Everything has been getting done in our town to perfection in my eyes. I mean, we've been doing a great job overall. So we don't want to upset our employees, but there are some things that we do have to look at to, better
tighten it
make our
up.
codes
Yeah.
a little better, so, as far as our handbook, so.
all right, thank you.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for coming up.
Anything else, I guess, unless Rosemary or That's about it. Everybody want to say something tonight? Okay, good. All right, so we're going to get into resolutions now. There's only two. I got to put my glasses on for this. So Resolution 26. I'm going to explain this to you guys a little more. So you guys got the email on this, right, as far as the assessment? So this was, and the chair had a good question. So when the pandemic hit, there was the executive order by the governor that allowed the exemption of seniors and them coming in and actually having to produce their income. Every year, seniors, for their exemption, have to come in and give their income to the assessor, because seniors' income changes year to year. Sometimes they cash in more money in whatever they have at home to cash in, and it changes. So that changes what they get back in their STAR program. And so what they did is they froze that, not having people obviously come into the assessor's office because of COVID. We wanted people to stay home, so they took what their income was in that last year, which I believe was 2019, carried it over to 2020. They carried that over to last year. And then this year they said the program is continued only if you choose to allow it for another year. So talking to our assessor thinks with Omicron going on and a lot of things still going on, she believes it's a good idea to extend this one more year. But in order to do that, we have to pass a resolution to do that. It's just not a given like it was in the prior year. So that's what this resolution is. If you guys have any further discussion, I will get right to it. Nothing?
Go ahead.
So Resolution 20, and I'm not going to read all this because there's a lot of legal stuff in here, but it's all on our website. If you guys want to read it, it's up there. It'll be in our minutes. But Resolution 26, authorized to grant exemptions of 2022 town assessment rules. Supervisor Corcoran proposes the following. Whereas on December 26, 2021, Kathy Hocho issued Executive Order Number 11 declaring a state disaster emergency for the entire state of New York due to COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas the state disaster emergency has resulted in limited hours of municipal offices in the town of Marlborough and rendered senior citizens and individuals with disabilities residing in Marlborough homebound. These factors combined have made it difficult, if not impossible, for many of these populations to file their real property tax exemptions, applications in personal, and may further lack the ability to file such exemptions. So then it goes on about telling you that they don't have to come in. And the town assessor may, in her role of discretion, require a renewal application to be timely filled with her office if she has a reason to believe that any such individual who qualified for the enforcemental exemption of the 2021 assessment rule may have since changed their primary residence. So that basically saying if Cindy does believe that and has information that this person's income did change, she can require them, even though we're exempting everybody to do this, she still has the authority to ask them to come in and give her the documents. Said renewal exemptions may be returned by P.O. Box 305, Milton, New York, 12547, or making an appointment or dropping off said paperwork to the town assessors at 21 Milton Turnpike, Suite 200, Milton, New York, and moves for its adoption.
Councilman Malinelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sessa?
Yes.
Councilman Kauki?
Yes.
Councilman Zambito?
Yes.
Supervisor Corcoran?
Yes. Okay, Resolution 27 is for our zoning board member. This seat was vacated by our new councilman, Dave Zambito, and the interview process was done by Dave Zambito and Manny Cauchi, our councilman, and George Solonovich, who is a planning board member. All right?
Zoning board.
Planning board, sorry.
Zoning board.
Zoning board, you're right, Dave. Come on, get me right here. So that's what this resolution is, to appoint a member. So Resolution 27, to appoint a zoning board member. Supervisor Corcoran proposes the following, whereas a vacancy has occurred on the zoning board and Dave Zambito being appointed as a town board member, and whereas the current board wishes to fill the vacancy, and whereas the town clerk has posted an ad in the official newspaper seeking an interested person to fill the vacancy. Now therefore be resolved that Andrew Nicola is hereby appointed to fill the zoning board seat effective immediately with a term ending in the date of December 31st, 2023, and moves for its adoption.
Councilman Malinelli?
Yes.
Councilwoman Sessa?
Yes.
Councilman Kauki?
Yes.
Councilman Zambito?
Yes.
Supervisor Corcoran?
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. So at this point, I'd like to have an executive session again, and this is to do with an employee, and I have to ask Councilman Zambito to not attend this executive session because it deals with someone he's personally involved with, and it's a discussion about our planning board secretary and possibly full-time or part-time position, and I want to have a discussion amongst the board members if that's what the direction we want to go. So I will ask, and I will tell the audience that there will be no decisions coming out of this executive session, so if you don't want to stay, I wouldn't expect you to sit around. So I need a motion to go to executive session.
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
Let's go. Thank you.
Okay. I trust you. I trust you all.